Hello kids, it's your old pal Brian. It's Saturday the 7th, I reckon. I'm taking the Blade MQX out for a walk before the wind picks up. We're supposed to have 40 knot winds today. The weather's really nice. It's in the 60s this morning, and we'll top out in the 80s. I'm going to take the work boat out later on in the day and chase boaters up and down the river. Yeah, share your frustration with helicopters, my friends. I started out in '07. The neighbor kid who was about 25, 26 at the time, he's a private pilot instructor, and he was out front flying the Blade 400 or something like that. He was making it hop around. He never did get that thing to fly. It was a miserable piece of machinery. I said, man, those things are cool. How much are they? He said, oh, they're about I said, are they $1,000 or so, $1,500, $2,000? He says, oh no, they're a couple $100. I said, wow, I can afford that. And he says, yeah, this is a pain in the butt. He says, what you really need to do is buy the Blade CX2 coaxial. That way you can be successful and you won't get bummed out and you'll want to fly. I bought that thing for myself for Christmas, and I was bored with it. About 3 months later, I'd modded it out completely. I'd make it haul butt. On a still morning, it was awesome. I always thought, though, man, they ought to make a bigger one. Anyway, I bought the Blade 400 myself and crashed it into the couch. It's not self-stabilizing, and I packed that joker up and sent it back off. So, man, this is not going to happen. So, I took almost a year off, and then closer to Christmas the following year, or so, must have been '09. I took and started researching the Llama, the big Llama, and then Walkera made something similar to it. And I went to RC Universe and found threads, and my old pal Peter was on the Big Llama thread, and I figured out that as pretty as Walkera was, E-Sky was the way to go, and discovered my evil British overlord Simon on the thread, and we had a blast playing with these llamas, Spiros too. Just, thoroughly enjoyed ourselves. And after about 3 or 4 or 5 months, I got bored out of my skull, because you can only fly them in clear weather. You can't fly them when it's windy at all. And man, when you crash them, it costs you a fortune. So I bought the Blade SR because they good people at Horizon, they made a great product with the CX, and I figure, well, they're touting the Blade SR as the next step. There was so much Expo built into the transmitter that I didn't realize that my hand-eye coordination was really good. I figured that, backwards it would be awful. And all their transmitter did was just irritate the crap out of me. So what I did is I bought the DX6i. Some guys on the forums had actually set up the settings for it, and away I went. The SR almost kicked my ass, though, boy. I had it out here in the driveway, and I'd put it in idle up. I was teaching myself idle up. All this stuff self-taught. I had no clubs or anything that I went to, and it right about here, I lifted up the Blade SR and idle up, and man, I must have let it go backwards or something, and it hit the ground, and I didn't shut it off quick enough. I didn't know anything really about the kill switch, throttle hold, and I let it beat itself to death about $75 worth. I was bummed out, emotionally bummed out, man. I'm like, one crash cost me almost $100. Could not handle that. I was mad and bummed out, so I said, screw that noise. I went down to my local hobby shop, bought all the parts and pieces for it, and rebuilt it. And one of the crowning moments was when I lifted that thing up off the ground, because it's actually backwards on its cyclic inputs. The swash goes down to make it lift up. Anyway, one of my crowning achievements was after reading the directions and following the exploded diagrams, it lifted up off the ground, and I took that thing and I made myself learn CP. I think it probably cost me in the end, with the unit itself and all the spares I bought for it. Uh-oh, itchy nose syndrome. It cost me about $800 to learn CP. Oof, that's good. So it wasn't a total loss, but for $800, if I'd have went with the T-Rex clones, I would have been way better off. It was a much more stable platform. Anywho, my friend Simon goaded me into he and I building one. We were going to kind of do it together, but we got jacked around on time. We bought them together, but I ended up getting a leg up with a friend on the internet who sat on the phone with me for almost 12 hours one day, and I assembled one of these damn things completely and maidened it in my front yard, which I still have the slightly out of frame video of on YouTube. And that was all it took. Very stable platform. Just had a blast working on them. I accelerated ahead of Simon because I flew mine first, and I got my hand-eye down with it, and then I swear to you, the reason that Simon got better at CP is because Rob accused him of fish tanking, and I don't think Simon's competitive nature could handle that, and he went out and taught himself flips and rolls and loops and floops and funnels and tornadoes and just all the cool stuff that he's able to do now, and that my wallet muscle and my almost 50-year-old eyes will not tolerate. So I play with quads instead. But anywho, that was my evolution, and I think maybe either 2 or 3 years. It must be the third year that I've been at this, and just been having a blast, an absolute blast. And the other day I got a little frustrated. Luckily though, time was on my side because my wife was ill, and I could sit and I could work on my helicopter. But man, it was frustrating. Why is my tail not holding on my gyro? Well, a guy on RC Group's been flying, hooked a brother up. He said, have you checked the tail blade grips bearings? And I'm like, well, yeah. I went ahead and pulled them down, and they weren't notchy, as I've had them happen before on other bearings. He goes, did you test them after you replaced them? And I go, no. He says, well, that's the only way you can actually know whether the bearings are truly bad or not. So went down to my local hobby shop, had to buy new bearings. In fact, it was funny, I bought my Align tail used. I'd never changed the bearings out in them. Note to self. It's a regular tail. I eventually would mesh it up with a torque tube, but I took and literally had to pound the inner bearings out in my garage. So they were bad, and the rest is history. Things flying nicely, with the exception of a ringing. It sounds like either it's a main bearing from one of my last crashes, or really it sounds like a bad swash. So that's my coaxial to CP evolution story in less than 7 minutes, and had a lot of frustration, but a whole lot more fun. And it's a great hobby you can pick up and put down. And with respect to the car racers and the boat racers and the plankers, for my personal condition, walking out in my front yard, my little 40 by 40 patch here, and being able to pick up even my 500 and fly it around pleases me enormously, because my schedule doesn't allow for going out to a flying field with any frequency. So that's kind of how it works for me in my personal condition. Well, boys, you'll have an Easter ahead of us. Happy Easter. And the folks that are away on plane trips, which is Ian and who is it, Ingleburn? anyway, the ones that are away on your road trips, hope you have safe passage. I think Rob's flying a bit in the real world. Safe passage. And Simon, it was great sharing some of those wintry scenes with me the other day. Snow in April, ain't that crazy? Alright, we're going to put this little bugger up, and I'm going to shoot my little MCPX around a bit. And as always, guys, see ya. Good morning once again. It's your old pal Brian. I just let it rip on my Blade MCPX. For those of you guys that have multiple aircraft, you know, it's always nice when everything is right with the world and you have all your aircraft up and running. You know, you're not in misery with something sitting on your workbench needing your attention. And you want to fly, but man, all your stuff's running right, and so you're like, man, I don't want to wreck anything today if I don't have to. So what do? Well, you want to fly CP, so you carry your Blade MCPX out for a stroll, and it's just so nice. I mean, you whip that thing around like a crazy person. Now I'm flying the stock battery because I need to exercise it, and it does not have the punch of the Nanotech. And I'm too cheap to buy $5 a piece Hyperions like my brother Rob. But I got 3 of these batteries. They need to be ran every now and again. But yeah, some of the best 4 minutes in your life with your clothes on can be had whipping your Blade MCPX around with a devil may care attitude. Just fun as hell. It makes me laugh to fly it. Yeah, I gotta rip this pack off, and me and the princess gotta run up to the store and do some stuff before I go to work today. So yeah, for a nice mindless flight, and you know, not really worrying about tearing the damn thing up. Who was it the other day? It was Phil who said, yeah, he took his out and just flew the crap out of it, and crashed it, and you know, didn't even lose a link. The nice thing about it is I can fly not just in my airspace, but my neighbor's real cool. He'll let me fly over in his airspace anyway. But you know, if I crash in his airspace, I don't tear anything up but the helicopter. Uh-oh. Getting in the dark there. But yeah, what a fun, mindless little aircraft to fly around. Uh-oh. Got over my head. There's my pontoon boat. I ever tell you all the story on it? A friend of mine gave it to me on my birthday last year. It was just the hull. The tubes had holes in them and water in them. And but the motor ran great and the deck was good. So I took and went to pontoonstuff.com and bought a $2,000 interior, and spent some time on the engine and gave it some love. It, you know, just needed some regular maintenance, and one of the gas tanks was had a hole in it. Threw it away. But uh-oh, there we go. Anywho, took and bought some marine epoxy and took a horse. Of course, you know, my fractures in my tanks were above the water line, but once you put weight in the boat, it would get water in the tanks, and you couldn't get a welder to them. So I went and bought some marine epoxy of Gluvit, G-L-U-V-I-T. And I got a horse syringe and some gas hose, gas line, and injected the Gluvit, which is real oh, we're just about out, real viscous, over the top of the tanks. I pressurized the tanks and found the leaks, and use marine epoxy and fix that bad boy. So you know, with my job, that thing sits for about 3 months at a time. I only use it for a week or two at a time, 3 times a year, and I just hate it to sit. So it's about ugly as a mud fence, but man, the interior is comfy as hell, and the wife and I have a blast on it. All right, guys, that's my life and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Oh, and as always, see ya.